Welcome back to Off Ball Takes. This is your host, Jarby Laws, and this is my co-host.
Christopher Wells.
We appreciate all the recent support and viewership on our content. And before we get started, please don't forget to like and subscribe and follow us on Instagram and TikTok at the OBT Podcast for more content and updates.
Yes, so the NBA season continues, and we actually got. I guess we'll kind of kick it off with there was a small trade, right? But one that could potentially lead to something. And in terms of what happened, basically the Phoenix Suns, they traded their 2031 unprotected first round pick. And in exchange, they got back 3 first round picks from Utah, basically from the Donovan Mitchell trade, right? In 2025, 2027, 2029, all of the least favorable first round picks between Cleveland, Minnesota, and Utah. So basically the thought process here is now the Suns were able to take 1 first round pick, right? And creatively were able to turn it into 3, which now may give them the flexibility to pull off potentially some other moves. Maybe they use the first for Jimmy Butler. Maybe they use it to move off of Bradley Beal. Maybe they use it to make some other trade, maybe involving Nurkic or others. Or maybe they use all 3 for that purpose, right? But essentially, they're continuing to try to gear up to, I guess, go all in and, try to see what they can really do with this team. I'm curious to see whether or not it's successful, right? I would have my doubts as to whether or not it'll be successful. But, you can't really blame them, I guess, for, trying to go all in considering the realistically relatively short window you have with the guys on your team as presently constructed, especially because you got to make a change anyways, regardless, because now we got about a season and a half's worth of data that suggests this just doesn't work.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it comes as like a big surprise to anybody that, Phoenix is trying to do this. It definitely seems like a desperation move, on their part. And like you said, there could be multiple reasons as to why they're doing it. But at the end of the day, the fact that they're even thinking about, you know, going after somebody like that, I think does scream that the situation is very dire. Like you said, do you want to get rid of Beal? Do you want to get rid of Nurkic? Do you want to bring in a guy like Jimmy Butler? So, I mean, they do. The good thing is they do have options in this scenario. It's not like, you're kind of limited and your hands are tied. It's just you probably would want a better situation because you probably just would want to not even be in this situation in the first place. But it is what it is. They're financially responsible for a lot of money being paid out to 3 stars. So it all makes sense, And I think, honestly, my priority would probably be getting off of Nurkic's contract and, maybe just trying to find a better upgrade. You know what I mean?
Sure, because now you got Nick Richards and Nurkic. I know he's been sick for a little bit, right? But even before that, he kind of was just taken out of the rotation.
Yeah.
So you kind of want to make sure that you move, one of those type of guys. Like you said, for somebody more productive. And as we're recording, they're revealing the All-Star starters. So they're starting with the East. They just put those out, and it looks like the starting lineup for the East is Jalen Brunson, Donovan Mitchell, Jason Tatum, Giannis, and Karl Anthony Towns. So pretty much we essentially nailed it right on the Eastern Conference All-Star starting 5, right? Not really much of a surprise there, right? Just because of, the names. The front court was the easiest one, right, by far, just because, those are essentially like, 3 of your best front court guys in the East, not named Joel Embiid because he's hurt. So
yeah, I mean, that makes 100% sense. I think the only difference between mine and the one that was released was I had LaMelo starting over Donovan Mitchell, but that's the only difference. So, yeah.
Right.
I mean, run of the mill. That's W.
Yeah, and he could still be on the All-Star team. He just probably won't be starting.
Right.
Well, now we know he won't be starting. But, with this Heat part, I think the part that was kind of an interesting conversation was the fact that the Bucks came into this conversation as well from the perspective of, if, let's say, there's multiple teams within this deal, there's a scenario where, like, Chris Middleton, right, could be in the deal and he goes to, like, Miami, and then, say, Bradley Beal, interestingly enough, goes to Milwaukee, right? And then that's how maybe, like, Butler could end up in Phoenix. So they've been talking about, like, there's a possibility for a lot of teams to be involved in this deal if such a deal were to occur. It's not set in stone, because teams got to agree to this type of stuff, and when you have multiple teams involved, it can take a minute or two. But, it was very clear that also the Bucks were interested in looking for guys too. Because even beyond Beal, they still mentioned Butler. And then they also even mentioned like a Zach LaVine, which I think, would be, interesting if you could get, him if you're the Bucks.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Bucks. I mean, I think it would be smart of them to look for a decent upgrade because I think you're not getting a bunch with Middleton, so I think you do need that
Right.
third option because I think that is kind of the recipe for success with them. You just need another guy who's going to be out there and provide some offense and take some pressure off of those two guys in Dame and Giannis. But the problem is I would prefer them to go after more of a defensive minded guy. So maybe Jimmy Butler would kind of fit the mold, but I just
Mhm.
don't really see him going there. I would see more so Beal going there, like you were talking about.
Mhm.
And that doesn't really give me a whole lot of confidence in a move like that. But I would say I think you would probably be better with Beal's, output and what he does on the floor as of right now than you would with Chris Middleton in the current state that he's in. So I think it makes sense for all sides. And yeah, it's probably gonna have to be that complex since it kind of all is contingent on, well, does Beal waive the no trade clause? So
Right.
that's the craziest part of it, this whole thing.
Right. And what team does he want to waive his no trade clause for?
Yeah,
Like, would it
right,
be a team like Milwaukee? We don't really know,
right.
but obviously, yeah, this thing is heating up. And for Butler, right? He's still kind of doing his thing in terms of not really making it not making it a great situation. Apparently now he's like anywhere but the Grizzlies, which is kind of interesting. It could just be maybe Memphis is a team that's a little bit more skeptical about giving him a long-term deal, possibly, right? Because it seems like a lot of this comes down to he wants that extension, right? So we'll see where that goes, but just kind of a wild situation there, just in terms of just all the wheels turning and everything, and we'll see if there's actually a resolution to it. But for Miami, ideally, I think you want the resolution to it just because it's just kind of sapping away, I think, a lot of the energy and everything within the team, and I just don't think you want a situation like that hanging over everybody. It's I think it's just a negative situation at this point.
Yeah, because that's the thing. In my opinion, with the Heat, I think they've had like a 50-50 season where they've had
Mhm.
some really good things happen. Like Tyler Hero, not necessarily breaking out, but, you know, having a really, really good year, I think is
Yeah.
awesome. But then you have Bam playing like complete crap. Then you have Jimmy Butler and his drama, Pat Riley, the rift. It's just not good. So, that's the
Mhm.
rough part, I think, for them. But yeah, I just don't see a future where he continues to be on the team because, and I remember you'd asked me, like, does he get suspended again? And lo and behold, he's
Right.
suspended once again for this
Exactly.
time it's, I think, missing a team flight. And now
Yep.
the
2
Heat are
days.
reporting, he's, like you said, sapping away the energy and the chemistry. And it's like, bro, come on, man, we got to find a resolution. So I think we're going to find something soon. It's just a matter of all the other cogs in the wheel.
Yeah, exactly, and that's these things do kind of take time because you
Yeah.
can't really just make a trade in 5 seconds.
Right.
And then kind of just moving around the league, and just kind of looking at the state of things. So for the Orlando Magic, Franz Wagner, he's now back, right? So he's returned right after Paolo made his return right a couple weeks ago. Unfortunately for the Magic, they have been sliding right since Paolo has come back because they've just had so many other injuries on top of it, right? Like Goga Patazde, who played well for them, he's out,
Yeah.
right? Jalen Suggs, right, who was keeping them afloat while both Paolo and Franz were out, he's been out,
Yeah.
right? And amongst others as well, it's just been kind of brutal for them. And like they're one of the only teams, right, that are in the playoff mix that have like a negative point differential, but that can mainly be attributed to they haven't had their guys healthy.
Right.
It's just now they're 3-7 in their last 10, so now they've slid all the way down into the play-in, and they've also had at different points a relatively tough schedule. Now I think they're coming across a relatively easier stretch, but like they've already lost to the Raptors, right? They lost that game after being up early in that one. They'll be playing Portland, they'll be playing Miami, right? They'll play Portland again, Utah, right? So they do have a stretch of games where with those two guys back, hopefully they can be better. But obviously, with like Paolo, he's still working his way back into the mix. Franz is going to be on a minutes restriction, but for them, I still think at the very least, if they can be healthy, they could probably scare a team, but it probably would be tough at this point to expect them to be able to pull off like a playoff series upset if they're like in the play in because you're just going to be playing teams that I think are just going to be a little too good. Because like if you're in the 7-8 spot, you're basically going to be playing either Cleveland or Boston in the first round. And I just think it would be very tough to see them being able to upset either of those teams. Right. So it's just kind of one of those tough seasons.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate, and I think they were finding some strength in numbers, and really digging deep and finding like not random guys, but unsuspecting players that were kind of keeping them afloat, like you were saying, alongside Jalen Suggs. But
Right.
those guys are dropping like flies. I kind of expect them to probably maybe trade somebody at the deadline, maybe recruit somebody that is more
All right.
durable and fits their mold, like maybe Cole Anthony goes or something like that. I don't know, but I think that would help. But the news about Franz coming back, I think, is amazing because now you have your two stars back, and hopefully you can get back on track. But yeah, it's hard to win without depth in the NBA. I think we've all
Right.
come to realize that.
Yeah, and then you look over in the West, and there's another team that's having a similar situation, right? It's the
Hmm.
Dallas Mavericks, right? Where, they just announced the other day that Derek Lively is going to be out for at least 2 to 3 months with a foot fracture, basically,
Yep.
right? And that's kind of a big deal, right? Because he had kind of become their starting center, before he got hurt, and he was, giving them production. Now he's going to be out, right? Because 2 to 3 months essentially is going to be around the playoffs, right? And Luka's still out. Maybe he comes back before the All-Star break, but we don't know. And even if he does come back, he's got to, get his conditioning back in because he's been out for so long. Kyrie's had a back issue. So it feels like for the Mavs, it's a similar situation too, where, I think it's different for them because I looked at them more as like a title contender,
Hmm.
more so than Orlando,
Hmm.
right? And, before the injuries, there at least was, you could see like they were one of the top 3 seeds when they were healthy, but now they've had so many injuries where it's just hard, to be able to kind of get out of the playoffs as a lower seed where you're not going to have home court probably for any rounds, at this point unless they can make a run. Because I mean, we all these teams that are in this play-in spot, yeah, they're like a few games back out of the play-in, but once you get past when you get past 4, that's kind of like starting to become the point where like, the Lakers and the Clippers are tied for 5, 6, right? And, you know, they're already 3 games behind Denver, right? Who now they've been pulling away. They've been playing much better as of late, right? Like in the Grizzlies and the Rockets and the Thunder, they keep winning. So like at this point, the top 4 are probably out of reach. So if you're the Mavs, yeah, you're gonna probably be stuck in a similar situation as last year, where you know you have the injuries and you're just gonna have to probably now find a way to battle your way, maybe out of the play-in, but 5 is pretty much about as high as you can go.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think with the playoffs in the NBA, once you're uh, past the 3 seed, in my opinion, I really think the 4 seed is kind of pushing it. But once you're past the 3 seed, like you don't have a very high chance of winning the NBA Finals. You're barely a contender, so
Right.
it is tough to be in that situation. And I've heard weird rumors about them, like they made Daniel Gafford available. I think that came
Right.
as a big surprise, but who knows? They could recoup some value and like maybe I don't know, bolster up some wing depth or something. I don't know, but yeah, Dallas is definitely in a tough situation because when your two best players have been dealing with injuries for the majority of the season. I mean, that's kind of the record that you get. You can barely play 500 basketball.
Yeah, exactly. That's the tough part
Yeah.
with the Dallas situation, just because, like you said, and I checked. So according to Action Network, right on X, right. So he's the guy that covers the league, right? He basically said that of the last 78 of the 78 NBA champions, 76 out of the 78 were 3 seed or higher,
Yeah.
and then 52 out of the 78 were the 1 seed, right? So like
Right.
essentially, like you need that top 3 seed if you want to be able to make a real championship run, right? Like
Yep.
not that you can't make a deep run, but in terms of like actually trying to win the championship is just very difficult to be able to do that outside of the 3 spot unless you get hot, somebody gets hurt, you pull off upsets here and there. It's just too difficult.
Agreed.
And that's the tough part about the NBA season is that injuries happen, and for some teams, they'll have a year or two or more where they're fully healthy. Everything completely goes their way and they're able to pull it off. And then there's other seasons for some of these teams where nothing goes their way. And it seems like for teams like Dallas and Orlando, not much has gone their way this season, which is unfortunate.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. And then we just got from Shams Charania once again the West All Stars starters, and you got Shea, SGA, LeBron, Durant, and Jokic, right? So there's a little bit of difference in terms of I think the starters we had, but the main core I think we pretty much had in terms of like we knew Steph was going to be there, we knew
Mhm.
Jokic was going to be there, and we knew at least one of LeBron and Durant would be on there as well as SGA.
Yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense. Given the clout, given the reputation, given the legacy, and then also the amount of talent that the younger guys have for sure. So I agree.
Yeah,
WP.
exactly. So now moving on, a couple other teams. The Sacramento Kings are 9-1 in their last 10 games, including a lot of wins against some solid teams. Obviously, this is rivals week, so they had a big win over Golden State. Golden State shorthanded, but still, win over the Wizards, but also win over the Rockets. They did lose to Milwaukee, but they also beat the Boston Celtics, the Chicago Bulls, right, the Miami Heat. So like even the Grizzlies. So not every team was amazing, but like it's kind of funny where our initial reaction to when Mike Brown was fired was like it felt like the Kings were kind of in a really bad spot. Once again, when you kind of look back at what they were like, like say five, plus seasons ago, right before they made that playoff run a couple years ago.
Mhm.
But now they look like a completely different team where like the energy's back, the fun is back, the pace of play, right? Guys are, kind of getting along and playing well. You got guys like Devin Carter and Keon Ellis playing more and contributing. Um, and everything is just clicking now, and they look closer to the team that I think we were thinking that they might be going into the season. Where a few weeks ago it looked like a complete mess. It looked like De'Aaron Fox was gone for sure, possibly during that season. And now they've for now righted the ship. It seems like right where now they're a much better team, and it looks like that positive point differential they had even with the negative record. It looks like if you thought that the team was better than what their record showed, then you were 100% right and validated by it.
I'm gonna keep it real. I'm not a believer. I'm still not a believer. I know, like it's hard to kind of like argue against the 9-1 record because I think they are doing a lot of things better. Like you said,
Right.
they are digging deep. They are actually playing two guys that I think are super valuable. You got Keon Ellis, who's a great defender, along with Devin Carter, who's a scrappy defender as well and can do a lot of things on the offensive end. So, that helps to be able to do that. But I think they're a Kevin Herter trade away from being even better. That's what will make me believe because I'm not sold on
Okay.
Kevin Herter
Right.
still. So I do want to see them make more adjustments because I already know come postseason this team's not doing anything. So I want to
Mhm.
see them go out and get a solid upgrade. Then I'll believe. But 9-1, like it's nothing to scoff at. It is kind of wild, but I'm
Right.
right now
And I
still
think
not believing.
Yeah, and I think that's where we're both at right now, where it's like they are better clearly than what they were in the beginning of the season. It's just like if they want to be in that other mix, then they probably will need to make an upgrade to this roster, which, I'm sure they'll be active. It's just a matter of could they pull it off? Like, could they get like a Cam Johnson,
Yeah.
right? For like a Kevin Herter and whatever, right? If like could they get him in and, maybe work him into the rotation? Who knows? We'll see. But now like Malik Monk's a starter, right? DeRozan's been playing better. So you're just kind of getting everything you're looking for, from them. The advanced stats, they're seventh on offense. They're 13th in defensive rating, right? So that's solid. I think you'd like the offense maybe to be a little bit better, but even then, like you're an above average defense too. So they're looking much better. And it's just kind of funny how fast the NBA can change, right? Because they were in that what 12, 13 spot. I think the last time that we talked about them in more detail, and lo and behold, now they're in that 7 spot. With the tiebreaker against a few of the teams that they played against. Like right now, they have the tiebreaker against Golden State. Obviously they could lose it, I guess, if they lose the next couple of matchups to them. But for now, they're sitting in a solid spot, I think, for them. But we'll just have to see if they can hold it.
Yeah, yeah.
Then another team, the Los Angeles Clippers. Now they are 5-5 in their last 10. To be fair, the last couple of games they've sat a number of guys, but I think we do have to kind of give them a shout out because of the fact that I think they are clearly a better team than I think we were than what we gave them credit for going into the season. I believe both of us were an under on this team because we thought, okay, they didn't pay Paul George. I think we liked the additions they made, but I think we felt that they weren't going to be able to make up for losing Paul George. And as it turns out, they end up making up for losing Paul George, right? Because you got the production from Norman Powell, right? Basically having a career year, right? He's essentially now a 20 plus point per game scorer. He's given them just under 24 a game, 49 from the field, 44 from three, right? Just a great season from him at age 31. And then, you're getting contributions from everyone else, right? Like you got Ivica Zubac, right? Playing the best basketball of his career, giving them a double-double, 15 and 13. You got James Harden not shooting well, right? But playing the role of the point, the facilitator, running the offense. Derek Jones Jr., Chris Dunn, even like a Mo Bamba, right? A Nick Batum. Like, so contributions from everybody. And that's with Kawhi Leonard only playing so far in 5 games this season, right? So you haven't even really gotten, Kawhi back, at full strength yet. So you kind of wonder, is there a world where, Kawhi's back, he's playing, at a high level, and this team is clicking? Is there a world where, they could get to that top 4 status, right? And maybe kind of
Hmm.
overtake a team like, say, the Rockets or the Grizzlies or something like that. Like, is this team in the contender sphere, or are they just short of it?
Hmm. Well, I think, we do have to look at Kawhi and look at his, career. And I think any team with Kawhi Leonard is technically a contender. Like, as long as he's healthy, playing, and contributing, to the way that we know that he can contribute, then yeah, I would say so. Because this supporting cast is not bad. Like, on paper
Mm-hmm.
and like in theory, you would be like, what is this poverty team? But no, like, they're different. Like Derek Jones Jr. doing a lot on the defensive end, and that's like the cool thing. They have so many like
Mm-hmm.
specialists. I think that's the thing. They have so many specialists surrounding Kawhi Leonard that it kind of makes me believe in the team a lot more than I did at the beginning of the season. But yeah, we were
Yeah.
100% wrong about them. But yeah, I think if Kawhi's back on track and they
Mm-hmm.
continue this level of play, then yeah, for sure I could see them being an easy like sneaky team.
Yeah, like maybe that's the dark horse team,
Right.
compared to maybe some of these other teams. Like, and they're number 2 in defensive rating
Right.
on the season. Now, obviously, what holds them back, is the offensive production, right? That's kind of the main thing that's limiting them. They're 22nd in offensive rating. Uh, but again, most all that is without Kawhi playing most of the season. So that could be the guy that will boost your offense. Once he's healthy, and playing at the level that we know he can play. It's just obviously the problem is, can he be healthy, right? That's kind of been the issue for Kawhi the last several seasons, right? Where whenever you think you can believe in the Clippers, then it's hard to, right? Because something happens. Usually it's injury or bad luck or something like that. But by and large, and then you also got to factor in that new arena, right? Where like now it's a different arena away from the Lakers. They have a real home court, crowd going on in there, right? It's no longer a scenario where they're just going to get drowned out by the other team or drowned out by the Laker fans. And then just in general, like you're just kind of getting everything that you could want and then some, right? From everybody involved. So just kind of a wild situation to see because again, most people, not even just us, right? Like most people kind of thought that
Yeah.
the Clippers were going to be bad, right, going into the season. I think some people made the case of like, well, they have some solid role players. There's a lot of depth, so they may not be that bad. But, just in terms of where they are in the Western Conference, like I said, considering the guys that they've missed, mainly Kawhi, this season, right? That's pretty impressive, I think. And I think it's a testament to, all the guys involved on that team. And it's just kind of funny, right? Because, again, going into the season, right, they asked Norman Powell about the Paul George thing, and he said addition by subtraction. And then when you kind of factor in the way that Paul George so far has played this season, right? I know he's been better recently, right? But just by and large, you look at the fact that he's just not produced at the level you'd like him to this season. And who knows, it could be the injury from the beginning of the season. It seems like the Clippers, it was the right move to not pay Paul George that extra year. If anything, pay him at all at this point, right?
Yeah.
Just because
Right.
he's not produced at that level. And, you just would have so much less room for error when you're paying a guy that much money that clearly isn't worth it, at this point.
Yeah. I couldn't have said it better.
Yeah, I mean that's just kind of funny how it goes sometimes,
Yeah.
in the NBA. Because again, there's always it seems like a couple of teams that kind of swap spots or just teams that you think one thing and then something else happens.
Yeah,
Just from that perspective.
for
So,
sure.
um, I don't know. It's just kind of funny.
Hmm.
But, then you kind of look around, and now you got reports about Brandon Miller where he's going to miss the rest of the season. Seems like due to some, I guess, hand wrist injury, right? So that stinks, right? Because he had been playing, I think when he was healthy, right? He was playing some really good basketball this season. And, I think kind of if people didn't really believe in him, right? Like I didn't have him as the 2 pick, but I didn't at all think he'd be bad. But like he's been playing very well this season, right? He gave you 21, 5, and 4, did shoot 40 from the field and 35 from three. But then you got to factor in, like that team just had a bad luck in terms of injuries all around. But 27 games, so that's kind of the disappointing part, from him. But again, like a solid, I think, second, season in the NBA. And then even like when you look at like a Scoot Henderson, like his numbers, had been pretty rough for most of his time. But you look at his last several games, he has been better. So that's the good news for him. Where he's giving you like a double double in terms of the production every other game, right? Like obviously we'll see, kind of where things end up. But, for Brandon Miller, I think it's very clear. Like I think Charlotte made the right decision in terms of getting Brandon Miller. It's just a matter of, continuing to be healthy, right? In terms of, making sure that you can keep your guys available. But that's been a problem for Charlotte, it seems like, from a lot of their players. Even like a Mark Williams, right? Who's again, he's been playing like a monster as of late, but we have barely seen him play, for his first couple of seasons in the NBA.
Yeah, it's tough because I think the two guys that you talk about, Scoot and Brandon Miller, they're in some of the worst situations possible. Like, I think Charlotte is good because they have a ton of talent, but you're injury crippled every year. Like it's just one domino continues to fall and everything else just gets destroyed. Um,
Right.
so that's the thing that sucks about that because they have enough collective talent, I think, to at least be in the play-in. Like that,
Right.
like that
Yeah.
that would be my expectation for
Once
them.
upon a time they were.
Exactly. When fully healthy, I think that team can get to the play-in. Portland, that's just a whole mother mess. I think that one is tough because your guard room is stacked, but in a bad way. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I just don't like the fact that Scoot is still not starting in his second
Well,
year.
now he is,
Okay,
but like
well, it, 7 games started this year out of what
yeah,
36.
yeah,
I,
exactly,
I
and
would
like
want him to start 30 plus out of those
right,
36.
exactly, and like you said, that's the point where, like you said, the guard room is crowded, but it's not like it's littered with all star,
Right.
all NBA guards, right? It's not like it's a Luka Kyrie backcourt. Now it seems like one of either you. I think Shaden Sharp now has kind of been moved into sort of a 6-man role as of late, right? So they got Scoot and Simons together. They've had just the bigs in and out of the lineup, right? Like Aiton's been in and out, hasn't really been that great.
Nope.
Klingon was good when he played, but he's been hurt recently, more so, right? And then Robert Williams, I guess they're kind of saving him and hoping that he doesn't get hurt so they can move him. Um, Again, he's had a string of good games recently, right? Like 39 and 6, right? 21 and 11, 25 and 8. So like, that's a good stretch of games,
Yeah.
but like you said, two bad situations, right? Just from the perspective of, especially the Portland one where it's just like I said, there's too many guys that don't need to be on the team. I don't think you have that issue as much in Charlotte where it's like the guys aren't on the team because they don't play, right? Like, whereas with the Portland situation, it's, there's a lot of guys that I think would probably just be better elsewhere, but I don't know how they can realistically trade some of those guys. Like, I don't
They
know how
won't.
you're going to be able to realistically trade like a Jeremy Grant who's had a really bad season this
They
year
can't.
and
They
still has
can't.
multiple years left on his deal. Aiton's not really been that good. Who wants to pay a center 30 million a year when he's not like, an upper tier big? I don't know how you fix that one, but at least for him it seems like he's getting back on the right track.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and in terms of the rookies this year, um you know,
Woo!
again, there have
Woo!
been again, because we hadn't really talked too much about the rookies in a while. Just and again, like there've been some standouts, but aside, I guess, from like the obvious ones, which other ones I guess have been, because we've talked about, guys like say Reese Shea right before he got hurt. He's been, all right. You look at Zach Edey, right? When he's, played and been healthy, he's been productive, right? McCain before he got hurt, right? He was playing well, right? And then you had, say like a Dalton Connect who played well earlier, right? But hasn't really been able to do much in a while, right? He just hasn't really been shooting the ball well. His minutes have been down. But are there other rookies, right, that are kind of, that have kind of impressed you recently as of late? Just because I feel like, for the rookie discussion, it's a complicated class to talk about, mainly from the perspective of it's not really that great compared to
Yeah.
other ones. But just, are there any other rookies that you feel like, deserve a shout out?
Jalen Wells, I think we've kind of already sung his praises throughout the season
Right.
for sure. That's my top rookie right now. Actually,
Hmm.
it's probably a close tie between him and Stephon Castle. I know Stephon
Yeah.
Castle's outside jumper, not it,
Hmm.
but everything
Right.
else is there for sure.
Exactly.
Like the
I
shot
think he's the
creation is
one.
there, the defense
Yeah.
is there, the playmaking is there as well. The frame, the physical tools, they're all there. So I think
Yeah.
he has potential to be one of the best, if not the best, out of this draft class, revisiting it like 3 years from now. But yeah, I think from what I've seen, he has the most potential for sure.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think Castle's the one that feels like, he's got the best chance at being, like especially like look at his defense, his athleticism,
Yeah.
even the additional playmaking skills he's got. It's just the shot. Like that's really kind of the
Yeah.
main thing that you're kind of hoping comes around. Just because if he can get that, then it kind of makes it easier to kind of do whatever you want. Because with the Spurs conversation, right? Like obviously, in the coming seasons, they're gonna have to find ways to start putting talent around Wemby, right? Because now we've seen, a sample size of this guy's awesome.
Yeah.
He's only gonna get better,
Yep.
right? And so we've talked about it before where ideally you'd like to start putting the team together before that big contract comes in because it'll just be easier to pile, to get those type of guys together. It's
Yeah.
just a matter of finding out which guys, you currently have, right, are guys that could possibly stay. Like Vassell, he's not played quite up to snuff this season, right? But I think you can still be high on him just because of the age, right? We'll see what happens with the other guys like, Sohan and others, but just as a whole. Again, shout out Stephon Castle.
Yeah. That's my pick for rookie of the year right now. I'm gonna keep it real.
And then another team that's kind of in a weird spot, the New Orleans Pelicans, right? They've won 4 in a row. They're 7-3 in their last 10. They are healthier now compared to where they were in the season. But the problem is, what's the point? Because it's still pretty much almost a very unlikely chance that they can get into the play-in, right? Like it's just too many games behind. Like the Suns are the 11. They have 11 more, or excuse me, yeah, 11 more losses than the Phoenix Suns, and we're more than halfway through the season. So what do they do, right? Like is this kind of the stretch where maybe they kind of start to move some guys and sell off? Do they just kind of just keep winning and just kind of just say, forget about it, because the stuff like the Ingram situation, like that's been completely quiet. Like
Yeah.
nobody's really mentioned him at all. And I know he's been hurt. He hasn't played in a minute, right? I don't think he's played since probably like December, if
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah.
I
He only
mean,
has like 10 games played or something like that.
yeah, exactly.
Or
So I mean,
18. Sorry, 18.
right,
Zion's 10.
exactly. So what do they really do? Because I think we've talked about probably time to see if you can kind of figure out what you can get from some of those guys. But, it's just weird because, again, like they've put together a lot of talented players. It's just they've had so much horrific bad luck in terms of just not being able to have them available. And then you have your two main guys are the least available of all, which is a major problem because those are the guys that you're paying a lot more money, right? Like you're paying, like, Ingram's looking for a max, right? Zion's been paid a max, albeit, the last couple of years have some caveats to it. But just, the New Orleans situation is rough because, like the teams around them, like say, like Utah just isn't that good, right? So like they can just keep losing regardless of who's out there. But like with New Orleans, once they have like enough guys, like they're actually capable of winning a number of these games that they were losing. It's just like, again, if you're the Pelicans, wouldn't you rather kind of like stay at the bottom and kind of like maybe see if you can get into the, top 5 sweepstakes maybe, and then see like if you can, move off of Zion or move off of Ingram or both, and then, kind of see where you go from there?
I mean, it's tough because then you're wasting years, and not even
Right.
just like another Zion wasted year or a Brandon Ingram wasted year, but there are some dogs on this team that don't get the
Mhm.
credit. Trey Murphy yeah, he's that good. Herb Jones as well, that good as well. CJ McCollum has been actually willing them to victory at times. Granted, he'll drop like a 40 piece and then drop 8 points the next game, but that's just kind of how it goes when your team looks like this. But you know, I don't really know because I think there's multiple directions that you could go in. You could just blow it up, restart, hit a reboot. You could, do a tank and just try and add more talent like you were talking about, or you could just thug it out. I don't know. I really don't know what the answer is because I think there's trade offs to all three, but
Yeah.
yeah, I think you need to find a resolution, before the end of the season, before the trade deadline, honestly. But we'll
Yeah.
see.
Right. And then last but not least, before we get into the rumors, Rivals Week. What was the what was the point of most of this? I understand, obviously the reason for it, is because of, the different team rivalries and whatnot, but a lot of them just unfortunately kind of felt like duds. And like obviously I think we have it goes through Saturday or whatever, right? But and some of it, like to be fair, is the injuries have kind of taken the sting out of it, right? Like say the Nuggets and the Sixers, right? Like Embiid doesn't play. He hasn't played. He's played against the Nuggets. He hasn't played them in Denver in like 6 years or something like
Yeah,
that.
when the
Um,
iPhone 11 was the newest iPhone, I actually read that somewhere.
right, exactly. And then yeah, and then you move along, right? And then like the Heat Bucks, right? They're playing or getting ready to play as we're recording, but obviously it's a different Heat team now, right? Because Butler is basically completely separated himself from the rest of the team. Obviously Celtics Lakers, right? That's like a old school rivalry, historic rivalry. Warriors Kings, right? Like now that neither team is as good. I mean, like the Kings have been better, right? But like you know what I mean. Like the Warriors, with them not being as great, kind of takes the sting out of that. Even though that game was fine. Um, and then like Knicks Nets, was there really ever a rivalry? Like
Yeah,
no,
yeah,
not
yeah,
really.
yeah, yeah, for sure. It's Battle of the
Yeah,
Boroughs, dude.
yeah, but I mean like. But like neither team was good at the same time, so like that's kind of the issue there.
Yeah, but
You
they're
know
in
what
the
I mean?
same city. It's like, any other New York thing. It's just going to happen. If you have two teams in the same city, unfortunately, it's going to be a rivalry no matter how good or bad the teams
I
are.
guess.
Like,
I guess like if I'm a Knicks fan, do I really care about the Brooklyn Nets anymore? Like, no, not really. Like, do I really care about
mm,
and it's but like into like even going into the season, like just kind of I don't know, kind of a tough matchup. But then like some of the other ones, um, it's just tough because like there's not a whole lot of modern rivalries at this point. Like just from the perspective of you look at a lot of the groups and some of them make sense, right? Because they're like previous playoff matchups. Like say the Heat and Bucks, like they've played each other in the playoffs what like 3, 4 times
yeah.
in the last few years. So like that makes sense, on paper. Um, Dallas, Minnesota, right? They played in the playoffs last year. Boston, Dallas, they played in the finals, right? Lakers, Warriors, of course, that's Steph and LeBron. So some of them make sense. It's just tough because like I feel like there's like some of these rivalries are more so just kind of manufactured rivalries more
Agreed.
so than like actual. Yeah, exactly. More so than actual rivalries, and of course the injuries don't really help either, right? Like the tournament, right? The NBA Cup, that one makes sense in terms of getting people entertained and involved in these regular season matchups. I just don't know how much like the rivals week one really because like initially like how many people even knew that this was gonna happen going into this week, like where like you tune in and you're like, oh wow, it's rivals week. I feel like there wasn't a whole lot of discussion going on into it, but
No.
I don't know. Like, is there a way to kind of make it better? I feel like I don't really know about that one.
Well, once again, I've been preaching this like all season. Make divisional games really matter and you will have some rivalries. I guarantee you that.
Right. Like Like if these games counted for something
more.
beyond just like wins and losses. Like if it
Yes.
was maybe not quite like the cup, but like, if you win, I don't know, like let's say like rivals week, let's say like you play the team, you could play your rival twice, like over the course of that week,
Yeah.
and like if you win both games, then boom, like you get the automatic, whatever.
Yeah.
Not that you like,
Something.
yeah, like you get some type of. I mean, like if you beat them anyways, you get the, I guess you get the tiebreaker or whatever. But like something in addition to that, like you're saying, like could there be some other incentive beyond just we're playing them like it's a regular season game?
Because
But then it's like when
I want the NBA to naturally have its own storylines. Like I
right,
want there to be, a division rivalry between two teams, and they're neck and neck fighting for, like a tiebreaker or something that
right,
really does matter in the end game. But like, I don't know, like rivals
yeah,
week, it sounds corny as heck in my opinion, if
yeah,
I'm gonna be real, bro.
yeah. Like I said, I think it's the combination of that and just the lack of Like we haven't had like like Warriors Cavs, right? That seemed like a real rivalry, right, for a
Yeah,
while,
yeah.
right?
Heck yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like Lakers Celtics, from like I guess 15 years ago, right? Like that felt a little bit more like a rivalry than say like this version of Lakers Celtics where they
Sure.
haven't really played each other in the finals.
Yeah.
And then like the other ones that are like previous final, like Boston, Dallas, like, is there really a rivalry there other than they played in the finals? Like it's just kind of hard to make the case for that. But, that's kind of the tough part. But like you said, can't force them. They kind of have to happen. So like,
Yeah.
you know, maybe we'll kind of see that as we kind of go along over the next several years, right? Like, people have kind of talked about what about like Wemby and Chet, like something stuff like that,
Yeah, or like now Jalen Green and Cade. I know that's been
right,
like the talk of the town, and I agree
yeah,
that would be a W rivalry if that
right,
sticks.
exactly.
Hopefully, if both of them turn out to be what they're supposed to be.
Right, exactly. So I think we'll be headed maybe for some more in the future, but a lot of them right now, I think it's just kind of hard to make the case for some of them. But
Yeah,
like even going into the season, right? Like Heat Bucks, I just feel like it's kind of lost some of the luster that it had,
nobody
compared
cares.
to yeah, like compared to previous seasons. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like I mean, like take football for example. Like people really hype up a lot of those divisional matchups because there's so
Right,
much history. Like you got to build that history, and I think this is the time for the NBA to do that. You know, in down seasons, like you need to be able to
right.
build something naturally. So let's get on it. And then that also can breed some other rivalries because, like
Mhm.
I'm not gonna delve into it, but you know what I'm trying to say, right?
Yeah, right. Um, so now just moving on into news and rumors. So it looks like the Bulls, according to the Athletic, are very happy with Lonzo Ball, right? So if you haven't heard, he's been in some trade rumors. So I guess naturally they're kind of putting stuff out there, to kind of be like, oh, we're not because the Bulls are in a spot where, standings wise, they're kind of locked into where they are more than likely, right? Like, I mean, the Sixers are more than 10 games below 500, right? So like obviously maybe they could, they've lost 7 in a row. So maybe they could close the gap, right? But that time is kind of fleeting, right? The Heat are starting to kind of fall off. Post Butler saga, whatever is going on there. But I guess like if you're the Bulls, like now it's kind of tough cuz like with some of these guys playing well, it's not the same situation as it was like a season ago where like you thought about like let's just dump Vucevic, let's just dump Levine, and just kind of get whatever we can for them, right? Like now you kind of want real things. I think Levine is probably the one that'd be more likely to get more just because of the age but and combined with the production. But like, if you're the Bulls, like what would you do with Lonzo? Like I mean, would you probably kind of be on this the spot of like, kind of see if you can kind of get something back for him. It's probably tough right now because teams kind of have to gauge his health. But or are you kind of more so like, hey, let's just keep him around?
If he nets me a first round pick, I'm trading him. But
Right.
I don't know if he will. Not this version. Like, and not that he's been horrible. It's just, the health and
Yeah.
stuff like that. And, he doesn't look like the exact same players. There's still, or player, there's still, some remnants, but,
Hmm.
would he be worth a first round pick? That would be the question that I'm asking. And, that's what my ask would be if, teams are inquiring about him. I'd be like, well, give me a first round pick, but who knows?
Yeah. Yeah, and again, he's on an expiring as well. He's last year of his deal,
Yeah,
21 million. So, you're gonna have to find a way to make the salary matching work, right? But the Bulls, I feel like they should be a team that should have, they should be making calls at the deadline. I just don't know if they'll actually make any moves, but
yeah.
they should be kind of checking to see like, hey, what do you guys think that you'd be giving back, for these guys? Because some of these guys don't really have to be on this team. But
Agreed.
I also understand, like, with the way some of those guys have played, now they've kind of played to the level of you can't just trade them for a dirt sandwich anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Then you look around and then you kind of see apparently LeBron and AD are not happy, I guess, with the Lakers again, according to Shams, right? They believe that they want the front office to make, roster upgrades with the 2 first-round picks. But it seems like from what we have heard, right, it does not sound like the Lakers front office feels the same way, right? Like they're more likely to pull off like a half measure or a relatively small move, right? Kind of like the one they did with Dorian Finney-Smith over like a big move.
Makes sense to me. Don't, and it's tough because you do have LeBron James and Anthony Davis, which is a great duo, but you
Mm-hmm.
don't have to bend to their will. You know what I'm saying? At the end of the day, you're the general manager, you're the front office, you're the team governor, whatever you are. Like, you really don't have to be at their beck and call, to be honest. Like, do what's right for the organization, because if you use those 2 first round picks, what are we looking at here? Are we mortgaging our future for another Russell Westbrook situation? I don't think so. That's just what I wouldn't want to do.
And it's funny for the Lakers, like the path that they're on is kind of, because you kind of in a way have 3 options, right? Like you can choose to go all in and move those picks, right? I guess at the cost of, it may be tougher to kind of build afterwards, but presumably if you're relatively well run, you can kind of bounce back from it, like in terms of like what Brooklyn was able to do. Or you could blow it up, right? So you got 2 extremes, right? Where you just like, let's move LeBron, let's move AD for whatever we can. Probably not going to do that, right? Because I don't think those guys want to leave LA.
Mm-mm.
Or you can just stay in the middle, right? Where you just basically just run out the clock and just kind of just do absolutely nothing and just, kind of be in a situation where it doesn't really seem like anyone's really all that happy, and you just kind of wonder where this goes, right? But I think it's clear that like, LeBron does not have the same level of leverage that he used to have, from previous teams. And, it's kind of odd, because he has actually, in terms of the contract, he hasn't done the 1+1s in LA. He's actually signed mostly long-term deals with them. And I guess for the Lakers, they're kind of also using that as leverage to kind of say like, well, you're not leaving anytime soon because you signed, X amount of years. I know this one I think is more so a 1+1. So it's a weird spot to be in, right? Like, because if I was running the team and I was just not interested in doing anything, I would see what can I get for these guys. That's kind of
Mm.
like what I would do if the mindset was we're not going to go all in, but we'll just kind of see what happens, there.
Yeah, I just wouldn't be willing to mortgage a little bit of the future. I've just seen that blow up too many times. I feel like.
And then the problem is with the blowing it up is, can you trust those guys to steward or excuse me, people in the LA front office and brain trust? Can you trust those people to steward over a rebuild?
Who
And that's
knows? There's a little
kind
bit
of
of incompetence up in
right,
there.
right, and that's the issue where it's like probably not. So it's like it's it's a strange situation, but again, it feels like we've had this conversation the last few seasons, right? Like, because even like last year, I feel like we heard a similar thing, and then the Lakers, as we did when we reacted to the trade deadline, right? They ended up not making any moves. So, I think the expectation for me is that I don't expect them to really do anything significant,
Yeah,
and then we'll just kind of see what happens in the summer from
good,
there.
good. To that, I would say good.
Then, according to Eric Spoelstra, his message to the team on Jimmy's suspension: get over it.
Solid. I mean, what more can you say, bro? It's sabotage. we got to keep it. We got to keep it real. It's sabotage and it's toxic from both sides. Like both sides are in the right, but both sides are definitely in the wrong. So
Mm,
toxic.
yeah. Well, that's it for today's episode of Off Ball Takes. Again, let us know your thoughts in the comments, about all these situations going on. All-star starters, of course. The teams that are kind of in rough spots in terms of injuries, right? Teams that are kind of on the rise. Let us know, right? Just, kind of leave a comment if you will. And if you do, we'll read it at the beginning of the video. Continue to like and subscribe to our content as well. We'll see you next episode.